Hello everybody, I'm so glad to see so many people here. I guess it's a good time to start. Usually here we run a little bit late just to make sure everybody gets in here, and I think we're at that stage where we're a little bit late. So today I have the great honor and pleasure of presenting my professor. He's my thesis advisor from the University of Minnesota back then, Professor Ting-Chuen Pong. Generally we just refer to him as TC. So if you come and talk to him, first name wise TC. Dr. Pong is currently a professor of Computer Science and Engineering at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Dr. Pong received his PhD in Computer Science from Virginia Polytechnic Institute, USA in 1984. He then joined the University of Minnesota, and later in 1991 he joined Hong Kong University of Science and Technology as a founding faculty member for that university. Prior to joining, he served as an associate vice president for academic affairs at HKUST from 2002 to 2010, and associate dean of engineering from 1999 to 2002, director of Sino Software Research Institute from 1995 to 2000. He also served as an academic research advisor for the Hong Kong Research Grants Council from 2010 to 2012. Professor Pong is a researcher in computer vision image processing, and lately he's been interested in multimedia and IT in education. He's a recipient of several awards. I will not go through that in the interest of time. And currently he is the senior advisor to the provost in charge of innovative teaching and learning. So that sounds very similar to Dr. Bandit's position here. And Dr. Bandit is teaching right now. He'll be here soon to join us after that. So I'll just give the floor to Dr. T.C. Pong, and let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Sutel, for the introduction. I'm very glad today to have the opportunity to share with you this particular topic, the impact of MOOC on higher education. How many of you have heard of MOOC, M-O-O-C? MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Course. Okay, and recently that has attracted a lot of attention, both in the education sector as well as in the business world. I'll provide you with more detail in the talk. Before I go into the talk, perhaps I'll do some advertisement for my university. How many of you have been to Hong Kong? Not that many. So the picture here is a view of the university campus at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. It's a very beautiful campus, I have to admit that. I was in Minnesota before returning to Hong Kong, so I was attracted by the campus when I decided to move back to Hong Kong. Well, for those who know the location of the Hong Kong, which is quite centrally located in Asia, especially Southeast Asia. Okay, we can basically travel to most countries in Asia within 3 to 4 hours. Okay, and some information about Hong Kong, which I would not go into here. About the university, the university is relatively young. It was established just over 20 years ago in 1991 as a research-intensive university. And currently we have 6 schools. We call them school. Some places call them faculty. Since we are a science and technology university, we are focusing on science engineering. We are also very strong in the business and management. Okay. We also have a school of humanity and social science because we require all our students to take courses from humanity and social science. 3 years ago, I helped to set up this interdisciplinary program office with the intention to eventually making it a school. Okay, currently it's offering several interdisciplinary programs, including environmental studies, risk management, and business intelligence. We also have a dual degree program, which is called dual degree program in technology management. At the end of the program, the students will actually receive 2 degrees, one in business and other one in engineering. Okay. The graduates of this program are highly sought after by the big companies, multinational companies in Hong Kong and all over the world. So, and then in terms of the university size, we have a student body of over 12,000, including undergraduate and postgraduate, and the medium of instruction is English. Okay, so we are very much interested in establishing collaboration with universities in Asia. We already have close to over 200 international partners, but we want to have more partners from Asia. So I think if there's any interest, we can discuss that kind of opportunity after the talk. Now let me go back to my talk. So in recent years, new pedagogies have been developed while education is going through a paradigm shift from teacher-centric teaching to learner-centric learning. These developments have led to an increasing emphasis on active and collaborative learning. Another learner-centric approach is the outcome-based education model. I'm sure that many of you have heard of it. In outcome-based education, you talk about the KPIs, and the focus is more on learning outcome and mastery of subject rather than just the content to be taught. On the technology side, access to high-quality digital learning resources, such as multimedia content, become more common. The availability of learning management platforms and social media provide better support for interactive and collaboration among students. Advances in mobile and wireless technology provide ubiquitous learning environment that allow learning to be carried out anywhere, anytime using mobile devices. These convergence of the pedagogical and technological development has led to new approaches in the delivery of teaching and learning, including blended learning, flipped courses, and MOOC that I just mentioned at the beginning. And later on, I'll go through these terms in more detail. I also want to point out that web and cloud computing are the enabling technology that allow smooth delivery of multimedia content to a large number of students around the world. And big data research could make use of large amount of data collected from students' learning pattern to improve teaching and learning. So e-learning would not just impact online education, but also brick and mortar institutions like the university here as well as HKUST. To provide you with a better understanding on the changing landscape of education, I'll use the graph here to give you an overview on some recent trends and development of teaching and learning. By the way, I want to make this presentation informal, okay? So if you have any question and if you have any comment, just let me know, okay? And then we want to have more interaction here rather than just a one-way communication. So in the graph here, you can see that the horizontal axis gives the mode of delivery from the traditional face-to-face at one end to purely online on the other with blended learning, which is a combination of face-to-face and online in the middle. The vertical axis gives the level of interaction ranging from no interaction at the bottom to highly interactive and collaborative at the top. And then in between you have low to moderate interaction. As we all know, we have most of them have taught in large lecture theaters. They could sit hundreds. For example, at HKUST, the largest lecture theater can sit over 400 students. I don't know what's the largest lecture theater here, around 400. And 600, wow, even larger. So, and we all know that for those who have taught in that kind of environment, there could be no or very little interaction. In fact, in an article appeared in IEEE Spectrum last year, John Hennessy, who is the president of Stanford, made a bold prediction on the death of lecture hall as university education moved online. In a typical classroom setting, especially for class size of over 40, and I understand that in computer science here, many of the classes are around 80. Yeah. So it's not uncommon to have that kind of class size, and we all know that the level of interaction is often very limited when you have that kind of class size. With the advance in video technology, it's now easy to equip a classroom with video camera, and lectures could be taken easily in class. And in this case, you can see the camera there. But in most modern classrooms, there's already built-in video cameras so that you can take the lectures. For example, at HKUST, thousands of lectures have been taken and put online to supplement face-to-face teaching during the past few years. The use of videos is mostly for review purpose, which is evidenced by the utilization of such video. Guess what would be the peak usage time for such a video? Before the exam, exactly. Okay, so I think that kind of behavior is same anywhere, in Hong Kong and in Thailand. Okay, because students would become aware that they need to study just before the examination. So, and then the use of learning management system. Do you have a learning management system here?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the most popular one currently is Blackboard, which is a bought WebCT a few years ago. I think they capture probably around 60 to 70% of the market. Another one is Moodle. I don't know whether you develop your own learning management system or you're using a commercially available one.
We have both, but we mainly use our own system.
Okay, well at HKUST we use our own system. It's developed based on Sakai, which is an open source system. So we have been putting over 1,000 courses on this learning management system every year. The use of this kind of system would allow the courses to be put online, okay, by using discussion forums, online quizzes, so that students would only be learning in a classroom setting. Certain learning activities could be carried out online outside the classroom. Okay, so this is a very important trend because learning should be done not just in the classroom. Okay, and especially that if you cannot carry out interaction in the classroom, hopefully some interaction could be carried out online through the discussion forums and other means. With the advance of computer hardware and the internet in the 1990s, there is a rapid growth in development of online educational software. Another term for it is courseware, which is a combination of the words course and software. The movement of making courseware accessible openly via the internet took off when MIT launched the Open Courseware project. Okay, I don't know, some of you must have heard of the Open Courseware project. And the movement was soon reinforced by the establishment of the Open Courseware Consortium in 2005. I noticed that there's one university in Thailand that's a member of this consortium. The consortium is a worldwide community of hundreds of higher education institutions with the commitment to advance OpenCourseware and serve as a coordinating body for the movement in the global scale. Major organizations in Asia, including the Japan OpenCourseware Consortium, Korean OCW Consortium, Taiwan, and in China, there's a company called NetEase that have made a lot of that's involved heavily in this kind of activities. Now, one recent development that has attracted a lot of attention, that's the main focus of my talk, is MOOC, or Massive Open Online Courses. A MOOC is a type of online course aimed at large-scale participation and open access via the web. So the two main features are that it's open access. That means participants do not need to be a registered student in a particular school in order to take a MOOC. A MOOC is an online course, okay, and they usually are available for free. Students would not be required to pay anything. Another one is scalability. Most traditional courses depend upon a small ratio of student to teacher, okay, but a MOOC is designed to support an indefinite number of participants. In some cases, it could be hundreds, over 100,000. Okay, one of the courses that has been offered in the past years has attracted over 150,000 students. In most cases, you have thousands of students, rather than just in a university, the most that you can have is like a few hundred. Well, then what is the difference between just an OpenCourseware or any other online course and this kind of MOOC? What you'll find is that for this kind of MOOC, you have interactive online activities, okay, and they are scheduled like a regular course, okay, rather than just putting it online. It would be offered according to certain schedule, and then there will be instructor to monitor the activities being offered on these MOOC, the so-called MOOC platforms. An earlier version of MOOC can be found in Khan Academy. How many of you have heard of Khan Academy? Okay, well, it's a education organization started by a graduate of MIT and Harvard. It started as a non-profit education organization. It has already delivered over 3,000 lectures and over 24 million views have been opened by students all around the world. And both Bill Gates and Google have invested in Khan Academy, so you can see the importance of this development. Now, in 2011, two Stanford professors, because they found that the AI course has been very popular at Stanford, and they decided to make it open to students around the world, and that particular course attracted 160,000 students. Because it's so successful, it started the first MOOC platform called Udacity. Okay, and now the Udacity has been offering around 20 online courses to students around the world. In April last year, Again, two Stanford professors, Stephanie Kohler and Angel Ng, launched a company called Coursera. By using the technology developed at Stanford, they initially obtained around 20 million US from venture capitalists. So this is actually setting up as a for-profit organization. Okay, although at this point all the courses are available for free. So you can probably expect that eventually they would have to come to think about making some money. Okay, because for venture capital you have to think about the return to the investors. In the same year, MIT and Harvard launched another book platform called edX or edX with an initial investment of 30 million US dollar each from each university. So that's a total of 60 million. Later on, in summer 2012, UC Berkeley also joined edX. As I mentioned earlier, it has attracted a lot of attention, including that the development of MOOC was reported by New York Times, Forbes magazines, Wall Street Journal, BBC and CNN and so on. Their interest is more on the business model. Okay, later on I'll talk about the potential business model for this kind of MOOC platforms. And then Time put up the topic as the cover story in the October issue last year. I want to point out also that in order to make MOOC possible, there's a lot of technology behind it. Okay, of course, the web technology is important, but more importantly, MOOC platform use the cloud computing technology. Imagine that in a university, you probably have at most a few, say, 50,000 students on campus, the largest university. Okay, probably have no more than 50,000 students. But when you talk about a MOOC, you would have millions of students around the world. For example, Coursera now has over 4 million students. It attracted so much attention because they have the first 1 million registered user. Okay, before it took less than 3 months to get over 1 million registered users on Coursera. But for Facebook, it took even longer. So Facebook had the IPO a couple years ago, and the IPO attracted I think over 60 billion US dollar. That's why there's a lot of business interest in the development of MOOC. HKUST joined Coursera in September last year. Okay, and it was the first Asian university partnering with the Coursera. We have now offered 3 courses on Coursera. The first one finished last month. Okay, which attracted around 20,000 students. Okay, and the second one started 4 weeks ago. It is a course on the first one you can see there, the science of gastronomy. Anyone know what is gastronomy? Science of cooking. Okay, and the course actually attracted 80,000 students. It's quite mind-boggling, right? When you have 80,000 students, just think about when a student hands in the assignment, how do you deal with it? Okay, when thousands of students are submitting an assignment, and then in the discussion forum, there could be thousands of comments being posted on the discussion forum. So that requires a lot of technology. For example, when the students post a discussion topic, then the system will be able to analyze the question or the discussion using natural language processing, so that they will be grouped, okay, into under the same subtopic, so that rather than having the instructor to answer each one of them, if there's already an answer to certain question, that answer will be suggested to the user, rather than having the instructor to answer them. And another important, interesting arrangement is on the assessment. Okay, of course, a lot of the assessment could be done automatically if you're using multiple choice or a short answer type of question. But then, the kind of assessment that Coursera would allow is the so-called peer-to-peer assessment. Okay, in fact, the first course that we offer is based purely on peer-to-peer assessment. Okay, and Coursera actually have done some study, and they found that the peer-to-peer assessment is quite reliable as long as you use enough number of peers to do the grading. Okay, and they have actually done some correlation between the grades given out by the instructor and the grades given out by the peer students. Okay, if you use say 4 to 5 different students in participating in the grading, by using the average of the grades, actually there's a very strong correlation between the instructor grade and the peer grade. Okay, so and then this is basically what we found in our course too. Okay, we asked the instructor to grade some of the assignment, some sample assignment, and then look at the grades given by the peers, and they have a strong correlation. But still, whenever there's problem, the instructors will still have to be involved. Okay, for example, one other thing I want to point out is that the dropout rate for a MOOC is normally very high. Okay, at the beginning, you may have thousands of students taking the course, or even tens of thousands. Usually, the completion rate is about 5%. All right. For example, the first course offered by Coursera, they initially had 150,000 students, and then at the end, they had only around 7,000 to 8,000 students who could complete the course. Okay, but it doesn't mean that the students are not going through all the material. We found that some of the students are still following all the lectures, but then they did not have time to go through all the assignments. All right, so for those who could complete all the assignments, then we later on I'll talk about that a certificate of completion will be issued to the students, okay, for free. Okay. Now, earlier this year in May, we joined another major MOOC platform called edX. Okay, that's the one I mentioned earlier, set up by MIT and Harvard. We have not offered any course on this platform yet. Okay, and we are more interested actually in this platform because one thing is it's set up as a not-for-profit organization. As I mentioned earlier, Coursera is a for-profit organization, although it's a NGO. Okay, but it's eventually they have to think about the bottom line. But for edX, all the investment are from the two universities. Okay, so but eventually they still have to think about the long-term sustainability. Okay, but one very important strategic move by edX is that they are making the platform open source. They announced in June this year that it's basically a learning management platform, but it's a large scale one. Okay, it could really scale up, and they are making it open source. That means anyone can take the source and make it your own learning management system, like Blackboard or Moodle. Okay, and they also signed an agreement with Stanford in co-developing this particular platform. Okay, so Well, you can probably guess the agenda would want to make this a platform globally, okay, a global platform for online learning. Okay, so this is a development that when I was in China, okay, because they really, well, if you want to control the content as well as having access to all the data collected in the platform, okay, it's important that you have your own platform. Okay, well, this important at the beginning when I talk about MOOC, I mentioned that you want to collect the data on the student's study pattern. Okay, because on this kind of learning platform, every activity, every click that the student make is being recorded in the system. Okay, for example, some student may be viewing the video in 2 times the speed, and some of them may be viewing it at least half the speed. So you can see that a certain section of the video, if all the students are speeding it up, what does that mean? You're going too slow. Okay, maybe the topic is too trivial. Okay, so you can go back and revise the delivery of the material by either skipping the topic or speeding that up. Okay, if the students are repeating the same section of the video again and again, that means you may not be presenting the concept very clearly. Okay, in fact, in some of the courses, by analyzing the data collected, okay, we are already improving some of the delivery of the courses. The assessment is also very important. Okay, in fact, there is a real example that in one of the courses, around 100,000 students participated in the course, and they found that in one of the assignments, 5,000 students get the answer incorrectly. Okay, well, but if you look at the percentage, with 100,000 students, 5,000 is 5% of the students. Imagine that in a regular course with 80 students, 5% is 4 students, right? If 4 students get the wrong answer to a particular question, you would just ignore it. But if your 5,000 students get the same wrong answer, something must be wrong. Okay, so the instructor went back to the lecture and found that something in fact was not delivered quite well, so he revised the material. So you can see that this kind of analysis, in fact, some universities are already using some big data research methodology in trying to analyze the information collected from this kind of MOOC platform. So what I want to emphasize is that, of course, this is for teaching and learning, but there's a lot of research issues involved in this kind of large-scale delivery of teaching and learning. Now, how about the business model? If everything is offered to anyone for free, how could they make money? As I mentioned earlier, they could issue the certificate of completion. Currently, the certificate of completion is free. Okay. For example, in Coursera, if a student completed the requirement of a course, then a statement of accomplishment will be issued. It's a e-certificate with only the Coursera logo on it. Okay. A few months ago, they rolled out an arrangement called the signature track. Under the signature track, the student register would have to have their ID, the identity verified. And again, they're using technology. Okay, what they do is to require the student to show certain ID, and then to show their face in front of a webcam. They would then do face recognition, okay, to make sure that this is in fact the student who is registered for that particular course. Because you can use a fake name or whatever ID in the original registration, but for this signature track, they would do the verification of your ID, okay, and also when you take examination, okay, they also do remote portraiting by using web camera and a microphone. Okay, they will ask you to show the surrounding of the room that you are in to make sure that no other people are there. Okay, and then also to use the technology to check your eye movement. Okay, what they find is that they actually have done some experiment. Okay, when you're doing the examination of the quizzes online, focusing on the screen, if some student eye move outside of the screen, they could detect that 98% of the time. Okay, so there will be a warning if a student is not actually focusing on the screen. Okay, so this is some technology they develop in the remote portraiting. So if a student is signing up for the signature check, then they would require the students to verify the identity, and also they will do the remote portraiting. And also at the end of the course, if they complete all the requirements, then they would receive a certificate of completion with the university logo on it. Okay, so it's different from the statement of accomplishment with just the Coursera logo. So this one, the university somehow would recognize that the student actually finished the course, but it's still not credit bearing. Okay, so students don't earn the credit. It's just a recognition, a qualification that the student completed the course. And then usually they charge a very small fee. Okay, like from around $50 to $100 for this kind of certificate. Another is secure assessment, like I just talked about. They are also arranging the examination venue, like when you take a TOEFL examination or IELTS or whatever, GRE. Okay, you have a examination venue, but of course then you have to pay. Okay. Sponsorship, well, sponsorship is a nice name. What is it? How come the projector is not the screen is showing the slide but not the projector?
Can you send it in again? Maybe it's timed out.
Yeah, maybe it's timed out.
Send your screen in. We'll get it done.
Okay,
Never seen that before.
yeah, well,
Please hear me.
but while they are fixing it, I'll just continue talking. So sponsorship is like putting advertisement. Okay, so if with the permission of the university or the instructor, then some banner could be put up to the certain course. Okay, so this is called the so-called advertisement. Okay, good. Another potential business model is on for professional development. Rather than charging the students, okay, they could charge the employer for professional development courses. Okay, one example is the gastronomy course. Okay, well, gastronomy is science of cooking, right? So they are interested in discussing with the food industry, like McDonald's, Pizza Hut. The manager may be interested in these kind of courses. Okay, because this is about science of cooking. Okay, so that's on professional development, and then employee recruitment. Okay, for students who have taken courses from Coursera of ethics, they would actually issue a kind of transcript for the students. so that with the permission of the student, the potential employer can have access to this kind of credential of the students. And imagine that you have millions of students who are now accessing these kind of courses, okay? And then the sale of course material. Well, some publishers are actually quite interested now in MOOC because you have access to millions of students. Okay, for example, when you have a textbook, okay, that you are using for the course, then of course most of the students would not buy it. Okay, but the student could access a website, for example, Amazon. Okay, if the students are purchasing the book through Amazon, the Coursera can take a small cut on the commission. Okay, so this is like the kind of model they can use to generate revenue. Okay, because of the scale, each time you may be charging only a couple of dollars, but when you are talking about millions of students for hundreds of courses, okay, they really scale up. Because of the domination of the MOOC platform in the US, some countries are now developing their own platforms. For example, FutureLearn is a UK platform launched by the UK Open University in December last year. It now has over 20 universities, mostly from UK. Open to Study is an Australian platform. Okay, they started earlier this year in March, and then they have now included several Australian universities. Open Up Ed is a pan-European MOOC initiative. It now has participants from 11 countries in Europe. Now, what is interesting is that some countries have started to analyze the potential threats and opportunity that could be associated with the development of MOOC. Okay, well, for example, especially those countries that are offering, that are exporting education, like Australia, UK. Okay, they actually generated education is a big industry for that kind of country, and even in countries like Korea, recently they have done a study, okay, by these Asia Pacific Global, which is research group focusing on research in South Korea, and they have identified some issues. From the title of the talk, you can see that they are looking at the MOOC as weapons of mass instruction. Okay, so they have actually responded to the development of MOOC, okay, because they don't want the education to be dominated by just the US style education. Now, so far, I have talked about the different models that are highlighted here, okay. They range from the traditional face-to-face all the way to purely online. But you'll find that almost all of them are based largely on lecture-style teaching. Okay, lecture-style teaching could be dated back to thousands of years ago, and they have been criticized as being not very effective. This kind of criticism can be summarized well by a quote attributed to Mark Twain over 150 years ago. He says that college is a place where a professor's lecture notes go straight to the student's lecture note without passing through the brain of either. Okay, so and in fact, MIT have done a study. They have come up with a wearable device that could be wear on the wrist that could measure activity of the brain. So in a way, they could look at during the learning process, what kind of thinking process is going on in the brain of the student. And they found that, of course, if you know the brain activities, when you are sleeping, the brain is actually very active because when you dream, the brain is actually thinking about something. And then they found that in the classroom environment, the brain actually is like idle. There's not much activity. And then they compare the activity of the brain to the activity of the brain when someone is watching TV. And they found it's basically identical. Okay, and you know that when you're actually watching TV, you're not really thinking. Okay, you are simply absorbing something from the visual stimulus. Okay, and it's like a one-way communication. It's same for when you are delivering a lecture. All right, so you think that something is wrong when there's no thinking involved in the lecture style teaching. So perhaps we can look even further to over 2,000 years ago. There's a Chinese proverb by Sun Ji. It says that telling me and I'll forget. In our context, it could be interpreted as it's easy to forget when one just listens to a lecture. Show me and I will remember. It may help one to remember better when they are shown lecture video and multimedia learning objects. More importantly, involve me and I'll understand. So the active involvement of the learner is what makes them understand better in the learning process. So what I'll move on in the graph here is on the kind of model with high interaction and collaboration. Okay. Actually, even in a large classroom setting, by using technology, there could be a lot of interaction. Okay. Of course, for small class, you can have a lot of interaction, but it's not always possible. By using technology like PRS, the personal response system, sometimes it's called clicker. I don't know whether any one of you have used that kind of device before. Okay, it's a remote control-like device. Okay, where each student would be provided a device and they could respond to questions posed by the instructors. It's a very effective way to collect feedback from the students. Okay, now that with technology, with easy access to the internet, you can do mobile polling. Okay, how many of you have used mobile polling before? For example, even now, if you have a mobile device, okay, you can use your phone or your iPad to capture the QR code, the two-dimensional QR code here, and then this would take you to a remote site. Okay, actually you can try it. Okay, and then if you take out your mobile device with a QR code reader, then this would actually take you to a polling question. Okay, and then you can enter your response, and then you can later on show I don't have internet access here, okay, to show you the result. But then you can actually go to the website to find out how the users are responding to this kind of question. Alternatively, you can also go to the website HKVU, that stands for Hong Kong Virtual University, .ust.hk/MP stands for mobile polling. Okay.
So this is like, instead of the clicker, if each person has a phone, then you have a clicker in hand, pretty much, right?
You basically have that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have any kind of mobile device, Android or iPhone or iPad. Someone is trying the iPad. Okay. So this would actually take you to a website. Okay, with the questions being posed. Okay. So and then. Another interesting style is the kind of style lecture lecture style given by Michael Sandel. How many of you have heard of Michael Sandel? Michael Sandel is a professor at Harvard. Okay, he offered a course called Justice. Okay, at Harvard for the past 20 years. He has taught over 15,000 students. In fall 2007, he actually set a record at Harvard by having over 1,100 students taking the course simultaneously. Okay, you can see that it's a huge electric theater. In this particular course, he actually introduced a lot of interaction. Okay, during the teaching. Okay, so if you're interested, you can go to the website. The course is so successful that Harvard created a special website for it. Okay, I myself have watched all the lectures. It's very interesting. Okay, and it's very interactive. And then recently, they actually tried to bring the world into lecture theater by allowing students to use the iPhone or Android device to participate in the discussion live while they are offering the lecture in Harvard. Okay, they actually try out this kind of experiment by connecting students from India, China, and Japan, so that the students can participate live in the classroom setting. Actually, Michael Sandel is very popular in Asia, in China, and in Japan and Korea. A few months ago, he visited Korea. He was asked to throw out the first pitch in a professional baseball game. So he's treated like a celebrity in some countries in Asia. To move on, I want to talk about other pedagogies. That's in general, it could be called active learning. Okay, active learning is a learner-centric pedagogy that has been around for many years, and results have shown that active learning would lead to significant improvement in performance metrics, including attendance, engagement, and standardized tests, as reported in this article published in Science. You can see that, for example, on the learning outcome, okay, on the assessment results, the performance index almost doubled. It has been around for, but then people has not really been using it. It started to draw a lot of attention when MIT launched a project called Technology-Enabled Active Learning, or TEO. The project started in late 1990s for a physics course. At MIT, almost all the students are required to take an introductory physics course. Even for the very smart student at MIT, they found that the dropout rate and the failing rate was quite high. Okay, because, well, physics is probably considered a pretty boring subject. So they decided to change the learning environment. Okay, you can see in this picture that instead of having the instructor giving the lecture in front of the student, the podium is in the middle of the classroom. Okay, and with the table surrounding the podium where the instructors stand, and the students are learning in groups. And you can see also the LED display behind each of the tables, so that students can plug in the mobile device or the notebook to display the presentation on this kind of setting. So it's very interactive. The student could do group discussion, a group project, while the instructor is going through the class, going around the classroom to assist the student when whenever they have any question. Okay, so the project becomes so successful that many universities now are implementing this kind of active classroom. Now that they are giving it a term called the scale-up environment. It stands for student-centered active learning environment with upside-down pedagogy. I will talk about why it's called upside down pedagogies. So now that there are over 150 universities in the US with some kind of implementation of this kind of scale-up classroom, and then at the University of Minnesota, they have even designed an entire building with that in mind. I'll see whether I could show you the video here. Sorry. Don't have the sound here. I think I'm good.
On the banks of the Mississippi River, University of Minnesota's historic East Campus has a new improvement that will change the campus in a very big and good way.
And technology-enriched classrooms to advance teaching and learning.
Those new classrooms are what the university believes is the largest investment of its kind in active learning classrooms. In addition to more traditional lecture space, these are high-tech and engaging, allowing for more interaction among students and faculty.
This is the classroom building of the future. We know from current research that students learn better and their achievement is much quicker and greater when they learn in a classroom that's interactive with the state-of-the-art technology that this building will now provide. This is the classroom building that our students studying science and engineering and mathematics will study and will learn in and be able to graduate from the university with the skills necessary to take those very demanding, important jobs to increase the quality of life for Minnesota citizens and beyond.
Okay, so you can see that they are very serious about implementing active learning. I understand that Suthep son is now studying at the University of Minnesota, and from our discussion last night, he really liked this kind of learning environment. Another important pedagogical development that combines face-to-face and online learning is the so-called flipped classroom. How many of you have heard of flipped classroom? The idea of flipped classroom is that rather than delivering lecture during class time, okay, they would ask the students to watch the video lectures outside of the classroom before they come to class. Okay, so that the focus in class would be more on the interaction. Okay, so that the students could ask questions on something that they don't understand when they watch the lecture, and then they could also be involved in a group discussion and group project during class. Okay, so that there would actually be more two-way communication rather than just one-way delivery of teaching, like the more traditional lecture style teaching. Okay, so another important aspect of flipped classroom is that teachers can pay more personal attention to those who need it. Okay, in a large classroom, or even when you have 40 students, you have to deliver the material in a pace that would suit all the 40 students. But if the students have already watched the lecture, okay, then some of them may already know all the material, then they would help out in the classroom setting by helping those who may not understand as well. Okay, and if still the student has a problem, then the instructor can provide the student with more personal attention. Okay, rather than having to deal with all 40 or 80 or even hundreds of students at the same time. So another interesting development with the active classroom is that at Stanford, okay, this is an article published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is the top journal in medicine. They, rather than talking about medicine, they talk about teaching in medicine, okay? And then at Harvard, a lot of the classes now are delivered using this kind of flipped classroom arrangement. Okay, so it's very interesting because by doing flipped classroom at Stanford, okay, the students are actually paying around $50,000 US per year. Okay, rather than just listening to the instructor in class, they're interested in the kind of interaction that could be provided by active learning. Lastly, even for purely online learning, you'll find that there could be a lot of interaction by using technology. One good example is a program called Master of Arts in Teaching that is delivered purely online. Okay, in this particular program, the student would be interacting with the instructor by using online chat room, video chat room. I think they are using Adobe Connect. Okay, so the student can interact live with the instructor as well as the fellow students. What is interesting about this program is that 2 years ago, when this was offered on campus, it can accommodate only around 40 students every year. Last year, they started to put this course online, and they attracted a few hundred students, but they could charge them the same tuition fee. Okay, each student are paying around $50,000 for the program, US dollar, 50,000. Okay, imagine that you have hundreds of students. This Department of Education at USC now become one of the richest department at USC, which is quite strange when an education department become rich, right? So, but then they're using technology now in deliver. We are actually helping them in delivering some of the courses from Hong Kong to deliver the course in the US. And they're actually hiring instructors from all over the US. They have instructors in New York, instructors in Washington, in Dallas, rather than having the instructors on campus. They could hire instructors from at different places. So, to summarize, I want to point out that the recent trend in teaching and learning are to move away from teacher-centric teaching to learner-centric learning. The desirable model here, you can see that could be achieved using purely face-to-face, purely online, or a combination of face-to-face and online. As long as we focus the responsibility of learning on the learner and involve them actively in the learning process, which is the most important part. It doesn't matter whether you're doing face-to-face or online or a combination. Okay? So, to summarize, I want also to point out some potential developments based on MOOC. How can we take care of MOOC in achieving the kind of goal that we want? At HKUST, we are rolling out some pilot project with the aim to adopt new pedagogy on campus. We consider MOOC as a catalyst in our quest for ways to improve teaching and learning on campus. Some development could include using the MOOC content that we deliver on the MOOC platform on campus. In fact, for one of the courses that we completed last month, we are planning to offer that on campus by using the flip model. Okay, that means the student would be watching the video lecture online on the MOOC platform. In the classroom, they would be focusing more on the interaction. Okay. Another important learning process that we learn from this kind of MOOC offering is that by using the assessment approach that we use for MOOC, because as I mentioned earlier, we are using the peer-to-peer assessment. Okay, we found that the peer-to-peer assessment is actually a very useful learning process for the students. By having look at how the students are answering certain questions, the student really learn from the peers. Okay, so from this kind of experience, we are using a different assessment approach for the on-campus course. So we actually learn from offering MOOC. We could also offer MOOC as a program rather than individual courses. Okay, for example, we can package a large number of courses as our common core or general education courses. in the future, I can see that in addition to MOOC, you can have MOOP, which is Massive Open Online Programs. Eventually, we could even have both MOOD, Massive Open Online Degree. Students could earn a degree through these kind of online platforms. One other development that we are interested in is to expand our to expand our study abroad program by allowing students to take courses through the MOOC. Okay, well, we found that currently, for example, Coursera has around 60 partners. edX has around 20 partners. Over half of them are already our student exchange partners. For the student exchange program, the student will go out for usually 1 semester. Okay? We currently have around 30% of our students who are participating in this kind of student exchange program. Although we want to expand that to say at least 50%, but there are limitations. For example, on campus housing. When exchange students come to us, we have to provide them with on-campus housing. And then another more important constraint is that some students may not be affordable to be away, say in the US or UK, for 1 whole semester. Okay? So what we are thinking about doing is that we will work with our partner, not just Coursera edX partner or any partner, say, especially in Asia. Okay, including the university here. Students could take our MOOC courses through the MOOC platform, Coursera or edX, and then if they're interested in earning the credit or to experience the actual learning environment in Hong Kong, they can come to Hong Kong during the summer in an intensive summer program for 1 or 2 weeks. They can then complete the assignment in a physical location and also take the examination at the end and then earn credit as a result of this kind of intensive program. All right, so that they could have a taste of education outside of their home country. I could see that there's a good potential by using MOOC. There are also challenges. I won't go into the details of it, but you can actually expect that the physical problem is easy to solve. With enough time and resources being put into it, you can set up the physical learning environment, you can set up the learning management system. But the more important part actually is in dealing with people. Okay, and in fact, we found that there has already been resistance from the faculty, especially the more senior, the more established one. Okay, which is understandable because for someone who has taught for 20, 30 years using the same lecture notes, they would be reluctant to change, right? Because, well, it's easy to deliver the same lecture for 20 years, but then to deal with the active learning part is very difficult. And you would anticipate that there would be a lot of difficult questions that could be raised by the students because they already watched the lecture. Okay, and then after watching the lecture, they could search for information on the web. Okay, and then they could challenge the instructor. The role of the instructor would be changed too. Okay, so that really the challenge would be on the upper part to deal with the faculty, and the student mindset would have to be changed too, especially for Oriental students because they are used to the more passive learning style. Okay, to involve them in active learning activities could be difficult. Okay, so lastly, I just want to conclude by saying that by sharing with some interesting observation with you, we actually found that the offering of MOOC align very well with the education philosophy promoted by the great educator in China, Confucius. Okay, he promotes something called 有教無類, that's education for all. Okay, MOOC in a way provide education, and it's not just education, it's high quality education, courses that are offered by top universities like Harvard, Stanford, and MIT. Okay, so you provide that kind of access to any student. The other one is that by using active learning and flipped classroom, as I mentioned earlier, that could provide a more personalized education, 因材施教 or personalized education. So by combining MOOC and active learning, we may be able to realize what was envisioned by Confucius over 2,000 years ago to provide education for all and personalized education. So, well, thank you all for your attention. Well, I'm sorry that I'm running over time. Okay, so
We started a little bit late. We'd like to give this opportunity to ask a few questions from the audience.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm from the Faculty of Science. As you mentioned, for at the MIT program for the physics study, and they use the group for the group student.
Yes.
And how many students that we can fit to use this model for? Because we have like 300 students at the same time, something like that.
Well, that's a good question. How do you scale up when you use this kind of active learning classroom? The largest that I have seen could accommodate around 80 students. Okay, so each table sit around 10. That means you have 8 round table. Okay, and very often these kind of classroom are quite flexible. Okay, say at each UST we allow setting up that kind of classroom. Okay, so usually you want a small size class, around 40, no more than 40. But if you want to accommodate more students, then I think you can have say up to 80. And in that kind of classroom, we can have a partition that could be used to divide the classroom into smaller ones. Okay, so I would say it's difficult for an instructor to deal with anything larger than 80. But I have also seen some setting, like for my alma mater, Virginia Tech, they started a project called the Math Emporium. I don't know whether you have heard of it. It's an environment with hundreds of computers. Most of them are Mac Macintosh computers. And they would have designed the introduction to calculus and algebra for the freshman students by putting all the instruction online. Okay, and then they would have the TA and the instructors running the Emporium 24/7. It's open 24 hours, 7 days a week. Okay, they have the student helper sitting in the environment there. The lab is like a lab. Okay, but then if the students have any question, there would be someone who could help. Okay, so this is another kind of setup. But then it's not really the face-to-face interaction like when you have a active classroom where you can interact with the professor, because you cannot expect the professor to be there 24/7, right? But still, you have the students, the helper. Usually they're graduate students. Okay, the graduate students work very late, right? 24 hours. It's quite common. So while they're working, they would be there manning the lab. Any other questions?
One more question.
Yeah.
In your experience, which model for the large class that can like in your experience is quite good for the large class? Because we also have the problem for the large class student that, as I told you, 200 to 300 students at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I would say the clicker kind of system would be very helpful. Okay, but then the way you use the clicker is also very important. The question would have to be very well designed. Okay, one approach that has been advocated by a professor at Harvard called Eric Maser. I don't know whether you have heard of it. He's very famous. He's the kind of the founder of an approach called peer experience learning. Okay, peer experiential learning. What he proposed is that you would pose a question, okay, and then ask the student to think for a couple of minutes before they answer the question, okay, and then the instructor would then look at the feedback from the students using the clicker system. The students don't see it, okay. After that, he would ask the students to form groups in a discussion. But in this kind of groups, he would make sure that students would be giving out different answers. So you don't want to group the students with all the same answers. Okay, so you want to group the students in a way that, but rather than just grouping them in around the tables, then even in a large lecture theater setting, the student would ask the student around them what answer they have provided to the initial question. Okay, after the discussion, okay, then the instructor could do the polling again. What he found is that during the discussion, especially when the students initially gave different answers, would be able to correct themselves. Okay, and then the response would improve at least 50% by having this kind of interaction among the students. Okay, so this could be done even for a large classroom setting. So the way to use the clicker is also very important. Not just to ask the student to respond. Okay, and that means the way you pose the question is important, because if a question that almost all the students would get the right answer, it will not be very useful. Okay, so I think you really have to do it also through experience. So what are the right kind of question to use in this kind of setting? Yes.
From cognitive department, and I have been using different techniques of teaching for quite some time, and I found that the most difficult part is before the class, like the motivation. Do you have any problem with student motivation? Like when you in class and there are a lot of students that are not motivated to.
Because the flipped classroom assumes that students would have read the material before, right?
That's a good question. Yeah, because we all know that when you give a reading assignment, I think 90% of the students would probably skip the reading assignment and rely just on the lecture. The reason being that they know you would be presenting everything to them, right? So that's why I was saying that why do you want to present that kind of information to the student when they can get it from the textbook? Or at the end, you would be handing out the lecture notes, right? So I think one way to motivate them is that the class participation would be graded. Okay, so I think students would change their learning style. That's why I'm saying that one of the slides that I put up is to change the mindset of the student. Okay, to change the study pattern of the student. Okay, if they know that the participation would be graded, there would be some simple assignment that they would have to do, and then the group dynamic is also important. Okay, if every time when you participate in a group discussion that you are being singled out as someone who have not prepared, okay, then I think the student would change. I think there has been a lot of study showing that students would adjust to the learning, okay, mostly because of how the peers behave. If you no matter what the instructor asks the students to do, they may not change. But if they find that the peers, okay, it's the peer pressure, right? But I think of course some students, no matter what you do, will not change. Then you may have to give up on that. Yeah.
Like for say a 3 credit question, 3 credit course, generally you would have 3 hours of lecture, right?
Yeah.
Now when you do this kind of a scheme, when you expect students to watch the lecture outside, do you reduce the number of in-class hours generally? And
Yes.
actually
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah. It's in the design of the online content is also important. Okay. What we find is that you don't present everything online. You want to save something interesting in class. That's partly answer your question. Okay. So you want to give out a lot of examples. Okay, and you also want to point out the important things that the student need to know. For example, well, something could appear in the examination in class. Okay, so for example, for the courses that we offer on Coursera, the platform that I mentioned, we now have 3 courses. The first one lasts for 3 weeks. Okay, we try only 3 weeks because we are separating them into 3 chunks. Okay, it's a series of 3 courses. The first 3-week course actually we condensed that from a 4-week lecture. And then for the gastronomy, it's a 6-week course, but on campus it's a 15-week course. Okay, so we try to condense almost 50% of the content. Okay, because in the discussion group and then in the assignment, we try to assign something that we could generate a lot of discussion in the discussion group. And then it's interesting that for the gastronomy course, after we receive the submission of the assignment from the students, the instructor would then look at the assignment and then provide another half an hour of summary on the observation he made from the assignment. Okay, so you just we try to not just end at the initial delivery of the online lecture. So we want to look at the student feedback and then provide some more teaching instruction to the students. And we found that to be very useful.
Yeah. To answer your question, it's still the same to me.
Same hours.
Because your 3 hour before, when you said 306, normally 3 means you give a lecture, and then 6 is they work independently. But now the function is switched. So you instead of they work alone, now you work with them, you discussion with them, then discussion in class. So you present in front of them to do such thing. But the lecture you present in the other way around. So it should be still 306. But 0 inside the 0 can be something more than that. So I think the faculty will work more. And then the contact hour between the faculty and the student gain a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And then help them to understand more and then to help them a lot if you use this type of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I also want to mention that in a classroom setting, but very often, even for hundreds of students, you don't just talk to the student. You still want to ask the question and want to get some feedback. In MOOC, you can do the same thing. Okay. In fact, when you look at most of the courses offered on MOOC, there would be the so-called in-video quizzes. Okay, so while the student is watching the video, okay, at some point the video will stop. Okay, and then some question will be posted to the students. The student will have to answer the question, and then if the student submitted the wrong answer, he or she will become again. Okay, if the student couldn't come up with the right answer after a few tries, then there will be an explanation provided automatically by the system. Okay, before the student could move on. So if you look at the duration of the learning process is longer than just the duration of the video. just like in class, right? You deliver the lecture and then there will be interaction in the classroom. So that's the reason why book become popular now is because it's not just the online video. There will be interaction. In a way, you are providing one-on-one teaching to the student. Okay, each student they can learn at their own pace. Okay, and then after collecting the feedback from the students, you could address the issues through the discussion rooms. Okay, so that there would be, in fact, more of the two-way communication rather than just one-way communication, which is very important.
It's not e-learning.
Yeah.
The more e-learning plus some.
Yeah. The interaction part is very important. Yeah.
Assistant.
Otherwise, well, I mentioned about the MIT Open Courseware. Right? It wouldn't take off. Right? It attracted a lot of attention in the beginning. It's the MIT course being taped in a classroom setting. It simply put up the tape video. So students wouldn't find it very useful. Some instructors find it useful because then they would be using part of the material from the other instructor. And then the MIT now is working with, ethics is now working with other university or colleges by allowing them to use the courses for the flipped classroom. So they signed an agreement with the San Jose State University in electrical engineering. So several courses now offered at San Jose State University using the courses from ethics online, and then the instructor at San Jose State University will be doing the discussion in class. And they found that for the circuits course, the dropout rate reduced by 50%, and the passing rate actually changed from around 60% to close to 90%. So you can see the effectiveness of using that kind of instruction.
I think we'll formally end this here, but those who are interested could stay behind and we can have discussions and so on, and lunch and so on, because I understand that some might want to be leaving. We have a token, gift to show our appreciation. I request our Vice President of the Bandit to please do the honors. Also, show of appreciation for the talk. Thank you very much. Dr. Pong also has some material on the PhD, what's it called, the PhD?
The PhD, Hong Kong PhD Fellowship Program.
Fellowship Program,
Yeah.
which covers, if any grad student, that is interested in doing a PhD, they could apply for this program, and it covers pretty much all expenses for 3 years.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, you can come and talk to him about it, and he can give you some information as well. But meanwhile, we just have an open discussion. Anybody wants to ask anything personally or through the microphone while we have lunch, that would be doing.
Yeah, for the PhD Fellowship Program, it's a very attractive program. Okay, so I'll just put it up here if you're interested. The student would actually get a stipend of around that's $2,500 per month as a stipend. Okay, and then also a travel allowance to attend conferences and so on. Okay, so if your student is interested, or when I visited some university, some instructors who are interested in getting a PhD become interested in this kind of program. Okay, we are also interested in collaborating with the universities by offering joint PhD degree programs. So you can co-supervise a student. So a student, for example, can spend 2 years here and 3 years in Hong Kong. Okay, when they're in Hong Kong, they can get the fellowship. Okay, when they are here, they get the support from me.
Or maybe from here.
Yeah. So I think we are also very flexible. At the end, we have set up the dual degree PhD program. That means the student can get a PhD here and then a PhD in Hong Kong. Yeah, we have set up that kind of program with universities in France and in China, in Korea. So if there's any interest, just let me know. Okay, and
Maybe they will.
Yes.
yeah. It's a very competitive program. Every year we receive close to 4,000 applicants from all over the world, and as you can see from here, we have 135 such awards. But then, even if you are the students are not getting this fellowship, they would this the selection criteria, focusing mostly on academic excellence. They could also get the regular postgraduate scholarship, which carry a stipend of 14,000 Hong Kong dollar. Okay, that's around 1,800 US dollar per month. It's still, I think, cover the living expenses as well as the travel to Hong Kong. If you are interested, you can email me. My email is